Welcome to the Creative Community. I'm your host, David Starkey, and my guest this time is author Ellen O'Connel Whitter. Wow, pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in our community for a long time, and you've been doing all this great writing that I have to admit I wasn't always aware of. So I'm excited to have you have in your hand your new book, or novel, Book of Hours, coming out in September. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about What You Become in Flight, a memoir that you wrote a few years ago. We'll talk about some of your journalism, and we'll talk about really whatever you want to talk about.
Great.
So I'm always curious about how my guests kind of found their way into their vocation. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
I trained as a ballet dancer, and which is so much what this memoir is about, What You Become in Flight. Really, my entire adolescence was devoted to ballet and to training, as seriously as I could. My dad's a college professor. My parents were very adamant that I go to college because I think I would have done
You just
something.
went danced on?
What?
Would you have just gone dancing?
Yeah, I think I would have just liked to audition and gone straight into that. And they were adamant that I not do that, which in retrospect was the best, parenting they ever did, because I immediately got injured when I went to college as a dance major. And so when I was in college, I had to figure out what else do I like to do? What else am I passionate about? And my family is very literary. My dad was an English professor. I have always been around books and loved reading and loved writing. My mother is a writer, so I realized that was really what was calling me, and I enrolled just in English classes in college and loved it. And it has so much more career longevity than dance. You get better at it as you age rather than worse at it. Right. I would already have been retired from dancing. Right. So I also really believe that writing is better when you engage with other art forms, visual art, music, dance, that they all feed into each other. There's nothing separate about art. So I think that it all was training in a way.
Now, where did all this take place?
In Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And then I went to UC Irvine for a year as a dance major.
Okay.
Yeah, but transferred back to UCSB.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you found your way into an MFA program at Sarah
I
Lawrence.
did, yeah.
How long did that take to get?
I went right out of undergrad. I studied abroad for a year, and I think when I was in Paris, I really took writing seriously in a new way. I was around people who were, very, very literary and in a very old university, and I just felt completely steeped in literary tradition. And I think that was the year when I was a junior that I realized I wanted to do this forever.
Right.
So I applied to Sarah Lawrence mostly because I read a book when I was an undergrad called The Boys of My Youth by Joanne Beard, and loved it, and wrote and asked if she would,
Be your mentor.
Be my mentor, yeah. And I was so lucky that I got in, and I moved there and had a wonderful time.
Can I ask what year that was?
That would have been 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you came out of the program, were you hoping to go continue college teaching, or what were you thinking you were going to do?
Yeah, I think nothing ever made sense to me besides teaching. I think, I tried other things right afterwards, the way those of us who graduated into recession had to try a lot of things. I was really lucky to get a job teaching at UCSB. I taught for a few years in the College of Creative Studies, and then ended up moving to the East Coast for a couple years, and then came back and got a full-time position, a joint position in the writing program in College of Creative Studies. So I feel tremendously lucky that academia just happened to work out for me. I mean, not happened to work out because
you obviously did a lot of work yourself.
Yeah, and also I come from a family where that's just sort of what you do, and I think that was always modeled, that was such a great life, and I feel tremendously grateful that has become my life.
Yeah. Well, it can be a difficult gig to get. Obviously there are so many MFAs, so many people qualified and talented. What do you think set you above those other folks who aren't working in a college, university?
Luck, partially. Also, I have a very thick skin with rejection.
Okay.
I think.
That's important. Yeah.
And I really prioritize getting rejected, actually, as a writer. I think the more you're rejected, the more you're accepted as well. And so I think that writing and submitting constantly, I used to have this goal. I read about it in maybe Literary Hub years ago, some article somebody wrote that went sort of, it was popular, that if you aim for 100 rejections a year, it's kind of amazing what can happen. And what ended up happening when I prioritized trying to get 100 rejections was that I got like
a bunch of acceptances.
Yeah, exactly. Which is amazing, but also not the goal. You know, if the goal is to get rejected, then it's like, well, I have to come up with a new idea because that one was good enough to be accepted. So now I would like to come up with another idea. And it made me, I think, have, like I said, a very thick skin around it, and also just constantly be chipping away at sort of the public voice of being a writer. And writing can be really lonely, and I think I always like to have a long-term project, like a book-length project, but then also stay in conversation on a more sort of, I wouldn't say superficial level, but just a little bit more in the public discourse, because otherwise I think I can get so mired down in my own thoughts and not feel like I'm touching into reality in some ways. So it's important for me to have both kinds of writing.
That's interesting. Well, I spent most of my life as a writer-teacher, and I know that being a writer helped me become a better teacher of writing, but I'm not always sure that doing all that teaching, and I was teaching at a community college, benefited my writing because it took so much time and energy. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, teaching is certainly a sponge. It takes up exactly as much space as
you let it.
As you let it. I also think, though, that my undergrads at UCSB are, for the most part, they really inspire me. I mean, we have very sort of like off-the-wall conversations in class. They are so inspired. I think there's something about like a 20-year-old mind, you know, more or less, where they're just so, they're not jaded yet. They're not cynical yet. They're so open to the world around them. They're funny often. You know, they're excited about the world they're embarking into, and I find that energy and that outlook really inspiring. So those kinds of things can be really helpful, just to find delight and joy in something that can feel really joyless sometimes. But also, I mean, some of them end up being good friends, you know, later on. Like I'm still in touch with former students from over the years, and I love to see, you know, what they get up to and how successful they are. So.
When you're grading at the end of the semester, I mean, that to me, I always felt like I was a coach, and then suddenly I was a judge. What's that process like for you?
Well, yeah, it can certainly feel like that. It can feel really disappointing. But I mean, it can also feel like the student that you didn't really know if they were getting it the whole time, like says something, you know, really profound, or there's kind of an earnestness with their writing. And I'm trying really hard now with AI to steer them away from it. And we've gone back to sort of handwritten blue book exams to steer them, you know, toward their own original thought and creation. And there's something about the sort of tactile nature of that and of their writing process that I think, I don't know, there is something like a little frisson of energy under it again. But yeah, I mean, grading is tedious work. And I think there's so much admin in teaching, you know, the planning and the grading and the making of your slideshows and whatever, that is really tedious. But what happens in the classroom is, I think, what's important and what's fun about it and what keeps you coming back.
Well, let's jump into a little bit of work by you. Could you tell us a little bit about Book of Hours?
So Book of Hours is my first novel. It is about an unnamed narrator who has these visions of saints. She's had them since she was in elementary school, and then later on she becomes pregnant and has very, very vivid visions of sort of bloody early martyrs the whole time, and a very difficult birth. So I will read just the opening, if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
This is from chapter 1. She opened her eyes several times in the night, her sleep punctuated by the rhythms of her body, the plastic arm of the hospital bed less than a foot from her nose, no matter which direction she turned. Each time she saw the pale tubes taped to her skin, the water in the IV bag dutifully filling her veins. This whole process had turned her into a body, one of many. In the hospital, she retained little of her identity from her regular life. They hadn't even bothered to write her name on the whiteboard last night. The medical tape pulled at the crease of her arm wouldn't let her bend it to pillow her head, but she was comforted by the thought of the tubes of saline plumping her back up, her sunken skin reviving, the water filling her cells and making everything juicy. She felt ready to burst. If she'd lived a little more, she thought, during these early morning wake-ups, she might not have any regrets. If she'd recognized her freedom when she had it, she might have traveled more, bought a Eurail pass and gone everywhere it took her from Helsinki to Istanbul, hiked through the Pyrenees along the Camino to Santiago de Compostela. She would have watched the landscape from the train window, slept against her backpack in bus stations, danced with a handsome stranger. She would have taken a gap year between graduating from college and starting grad school and gone to live in Provence or New Zealand or Kyoto. She wished that she'd been a bartender or English teacher abroad, which would surely have given her better stories to tell one day, instead of working as the tutor to a billionaire family who made her sign an NDA. She would have gotten her PhD. It wasn't that she lacked confidence. She knew how to buy food in foreign grocery stores and ask people if they spoke English and navigate public transportation. It was that she lacked faith. Faith in herself, faith in her future. It was only in these pre-dawn hours in her hospital bed that she could see so clearly she lacked faith in God too. A nurse came in with the first signs of dawn, soft-footed. She picked up a dry erase marker and erased yesterday's date, replacing it with another. April 29th, the feast day of St. Catherine of Siena. The woman squeezed in one last dream of the striped cathedral in Siena, a banquet table, a hungry saint at one end, just flesh and bones. She had taken the name Catherine when she was confirmed in 8th grade and remembered more than Catherine's hunger, her wasting away in service to God. She remembered her stigmata, too, how she drank pus from a cancerous wound to feel closer to Christ's suffering, how she eventually convinced 2 popes to reunite the church. She remembered Catherine of Siena as a woman of letters, a woman of courage. Catherine died from starvation when she was only 33. She had already done so much, but perhaps she had regrets too. Good morning, the nurse said softly as she approached the hospital bed. The woman's dreams ended. She turned her head to the window where she saw the sun's faintest glow, far away, signaling the start of something new. Today would be another kind of feast day. Beside the woman, her husband stirred in a hospital recliner where he had slept since midnight the night before. He put down the hood of his sweatshirt, his hair stood up in several directions. Across the room, a midwife in the window seat sat up, rubbing her eyes. Today is a beautiful day to have a baby, she said.
Wow. It's like a little short story almost to start the novel off. What was the inspiration for that?
The inspiration was that in 2020, I had this memoir come out, right. What You Become in Flight, and then a month later had my first baby. And it was May 2020, which was a really hard time to be in the hospital and to launch a book.
Hard to pick a worse
yeah,
time,
it was not ideal, but it was a really scary time to have a baby, and I had a really difficult birth, and anyway, ended up with a diagnosis of PTSD years later. It took me a few years to sort of take it as seriously as I probably should have. And one of the ways that I sort of found my way out of that was by writing about it. And I could not write it as nonfiction. I thought it was sort of boring or mundane, or there wasn't enough, like I couldn't figure out how to get the sort of magical thinking that comes with PTSD through. So I have this woman have these saintly hallucinations the whole time, which of course I didn't have. You know, this book is like both about my experience and not at all about my experience, as fiction tends to be. But it was really based in sort of the healing from this really difficult experience.
Yeah. Well, and Catherine of Siena was such a powerful figure, you know, the way she influenced popes. I also love that you mentioned the drinking of pus, which is a fact about her that it never goes away. It's so visceral.
Yeah, it's so visceral. I know, and I love that about the saints. I went to Catholic school through 12th grade.
Okay.
So saints were really important to me, but because they're so weird. I mean, they're so strange, and they don't fit in our modern ideas around faith or magic at all. I mean, they're completely their own thing. But they're so embodied. I mean, their suffering was so embodied, and the ways that they tried to make themselves suffer physically, wearing their hair suits or drinking pus just to feel closer to suffering. I mean, it's so strange and so metal.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back, and I'd love to hear another reading from Book of Hours, but I'm also interested in all the nonfiction that you've written.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That came about Honestly, because my agent told me that I needed to sort of build a platform in order to launch this nonfiction book years ago. So I thought that, I sort of tried to think about what I had any expertise at all in, and started off really mostly writing about ballet, which was the thing I knew anything about. And then realized as I grew older that I knew other things about other things, and so have felt a little bit more confident in pitching ideas beyond just ballet. But also I teach a journalism class at UC Santa Barbara, so I like to have pitching experience so I can tell students, like, here's where I failed, or here's where this pitch was weak, and here's what I learned from it, so that they can apply that. I think seeing their teachers as actual working writers who have had setbacks and learned from failures, probably, I don't know. I like to think it's helpful to them. I don't know.
Well, I'd love to know what is some good pitching advice and some bad pitching advice when you've got an idea for a piece for a journal.
Good pitching advice, I think, is to keep it really short. Like, I always tell my students 2 paragraphs, not including your bio, and then to research it a lot, to include lots of hyperlinks to where these ideas are coming from, so that you can prove that you know what you're talking about in a very short space, which is kind of what journalism is. It's all about word count, and it's all about a very specific kind of research. And then also, like, if there are more people that you want to interview, you can always say that at the end.
Right.
And then bad pitching advice is probably, asking for money right away. I think bad pitching advice is probably having a topic but not an angle. You're like, climate change, I want to write about that, but it's like, well, what about that? So I think when you have not just an angle, but a story, like, here is how this looks in this one community, or for this one person who's doing something extraordinary, that's where the story is, and that's more likely to be picked up. Yeah.
Well, as I was reading through your pieces on your website, I thought, well, you have a real authority, but you have a sense of, like, grace and elegance that I associate with poetry. Are you a poet as well, too?
No, not at all.
Well, you should try it.
Thank you. That means so much. I am so in awe of poets because of what they do with so few words, and how they think about language, and on a line level, in a way that prose writers, I think, can kind of skip over if they're lazy. But I don't even particularly read poetry anymore, but I loved studying it in school, and
well, it's stuck.
Thank you. That's really nice. Yeah, I really admire poets.
Yeah. Is there any one piece that you've written over the years that you particularly are fond of?
The first one that came to mind is I wrote one last year for The Cut, which is New York Magazine, about how Mary Oliver's estate was monetizing her legacy by having, like, tote bags and little hats and cropped T-shirts that say, like, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life, or kind of like boiling her poetry down into these wearable catchphrases, gimmicks. And I thought that was funny, but also kind of gross. And then her estate got really upset about it and wrote me an email trying to defend, why they had done this. But I just also was thinking about Mary Oliver herself, and what her values were, and how much I thought that she probably wouldn't like that. Yeah, wouldn't like that.
Yeah, she's an interesting figure. Contemporary letters was. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 8.5 minutes left. Okay. Let's hear another piece from Book of Hours.
I'm going to read a short piece. This is from after the pregnancy has already begun. So the midwife is named Olivia in this, and the husband of the main character is named Ted. Okay. What do you plan to do with the placenta? Olivia asked them one afternoon during one of their midwife appointments. They were in the exam room, Olivia on a yoga ball and the woman supine on the table where she was pulling her shirt down after Olivia had listened to the baby's heartbeat. Do we have to take it? The woman asked. I've never thought much about it. Yes, we can't dispose of it for you, Olivia said. At the hospital, they can put it in the incinerator, but we don't have one of those. Gross, the woman said. Well, I guess we'll take it and figure it out. She looked to Ted, who shrugged. I'll eat it with some tartar sauce, he said. Some mothers do eat it, Olivia said, and his face blanched. Or they get it encapsulated and take it as a supplement. Some people bury it. You can donate it, make it into art, make it into jewelry. Donate it, the woman asked. To whom? To science, basically, Olivia told her. She handed her a sheet with "What to do with your placenta" written across the top. "Placenta is very nutrient dense," the woman read aloud, "though some people find the taste unpleasant." "Placenta is amazing, so think about what you want to do with yours," Olivia said. "No need to make a choice now. Ask your friends what they all did. There's no real evidence to say eating it helps, but lots of people swear by it." As they left the birth center, the woman sent the exact same text to her college friend Rachel, her friend whose baby shower she'd recently gone to, and another friend who had just had her second. "What did you do with your placenta?" "I froze mine, then hacked off little bits and put them into smoothies," Rachel wrote. "It tasted like shit, but it helped with postpartum depression." That might have been a little hardcore for the woman. Besides, how did Rachel know it helped since she had nothing to compare it to? "I made a print of mine and then got the umbilical cord framed into a heart," the second friend wrote back. "And then we planted it in the pot of a tiny little plum tree, which I think we'll plant in the ground on her first birthday. I'm nuts for placenta." "I let the hospital take care of it for Simon, but then encapsulated it for Lulu," her third friend wrote back. "It was $200, but I had such bad postpartum depression after Simon, I was willing to try anything." "Do you think it helped?" the woman asked. "No," her friend replied instantly. That night, as they made dinner together, the woman asked Ted what he thought. "I guess we could plant it," he said. "Yeah, same," she said. "I can't eat it. It's so gross, it almost makes me wish I were having a hospital birth just so I could ask them to deal with it and not ever think about it again."
Oh, wow. There are a lot of funny things in there, and I'm thinking, I'm nuts for placenta, the great t-shirt. Maybe we could get the Mary Oliver.
Yeah, no, it's...
That's, I mean, there's a lot of seriousness underneath that, but it's kind of showing your comic writing there to effect. Yeah.
Thank you.
How did that scene come about?
Because I had my babies, both of them, in a hospital, but I remember we talked to midwives about this, and I was horrified that anybody would have to make a decision, and then to find out what some of the decisions were. But then we live in California. I have friends who have done all sorts of things with their placentas. I remember reading Kim Kardashian ate hers. It's really popular.
Right.
And just that's so funny and so disgusting, but also so consequential. I think when there are these really big consequential things, taking a poll of your friends or seeing what, like crowdsourcing the answer can be very funny while also helping you sort of weigh, with real seriousness.
Yeah, so I mean, just these two little passages that you've read aloud, I mean, I feel like you have a real sweep in the way that you kind of look at the world. You're digging down on these particular little moments, but I feel like there's a larger picture behind what's being written.
That's
so
nice.
yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit now. You've got this book; it's coming out in September. What does the rollout look like for you?
I know I'm going to do some readings, and I'm so excited to do those in person because, like I said, the first one came out April 2020, and I remember, the first one's about ballet, and people kept asking me in readings, like, why does ballet matter right now? And I was like, it doesn't really, COVID is rampant, like, don't worry about ballet. But this feels more political, I think, in a way. It's so much about women's autonomy and reproductive rights, and so I think that is sort of unfortunately always relevant.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited to be with people. I mean, you write a whole book and it takes years to revise it and to, like edit it once, if you're lucky enough to sell it. So I'm excited to just share it with people because it feels like it's lived in my head or in a Word document for so long. And so I am looking forward to just like putting it in the hands of people that I've been talking about it with for years, including friends I've talked to about it for years, et cetera.
But the creative community got to be the debut site for the...
Truly, I've never read any of this out loud.
It's historical.
Yeah, exactly.
We just have a few minutes left, and I'm always curious. You've already given some really good advice to writers as a writing teacher. I'm sure that you're a very popular teacher. What else? Just, you never know who's watching. It could be someone who's in their 70s but has always wanted to start writing. It could be someone who's, the age of your students in their 20s. What's some advice that you can give to people that they can use to kind of get into this if they really have always wanted to be a writer?
Well, I think my advice is twofold, which is that writing takes a lot of discipline. So it's a lot of just sitting in a chair and getting and setting whatever your goal is. If your goal is 500 words a day, or to write for half an hour a day, or something. Those are fine goals, and you just have to make yourself do it. And sometimes that can be finding an accountability partner, or a sticker chart for adults. But then the other part of it is that I think that when you're being creative, you need a lot of time for play and rest and thinking. And by rest, I don't necessarily mean physical rest, although maybe that too. But like, go to an art gallery, or go talk to friends. And I think talking with friends and going out and being in the world can feed your writing more than anything else.
Yeah. What have you got on? I mean, you finish a big project like this, or do you immediately already have 3 or 4 things that you want to do, or what's sort of next on your list?
Yeah, I am starting to revise another book. I'm working on a PhD.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even get a chance to talk. This is at Trinity College in Dublin.
College in Dublin. Yeah, I mean, there are always projects, and I think that's true for all creative
writers,
people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Briefly, your dissertation topic at Trinity.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a nonfiction version of Book of Hours. It's my own experience, but then also looking at what other writers of memoirs have written about giving birth, and in particular, like very difficult, traumatic births. So it's part autobiography studies and part creative dissertation.
Yeah, it should be fabulous. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, Ellen. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
The Creative Community is a production of TVSB. I'm your host, David Starkey, and we'll see you next time.